I'll let you know when we get to your screen. There we go.
Sure. Can you see Microsoft PowerPoint?
I can.
All right. I take it everybody can hear me. All right, so let's do this. I think Brittany went through these. Yep. Yep. All right. Okay. So we did this webinar kind of as a special request to some people who were in one of my last webinars who were looking for a little bit more basic kind of 101 level ServiceNow education. So I decided to that this webinar would be kind of a basic introduction to scripting in ServiceNow and using GlideRecord. So what is GlideRecord? It's the JavaScript API object for interacting with all of the tables and the records in ServiceNow. So if you're used to SQL, it's a way to access and query and update and insert records in the tables through JavaScript. Why is it called GlideRecord then, right? Well, back when ServiceNow first started, they started out calling themselves GlideSoft, right? So then they renamed to ServiceNow, but the Glide part still kind of stayed within their code. So you'll see it all over. You'll see GlideRecord, Glide Date Time, Glide Ajax, all of this within the API. So if you ever wonder where the Glide came from, it used to be GlideSoft. All right, so what can you do? You can query records and return data from them, right? You can create new records and you can update records, right? You can query those records without needing to DotWalk. You can run queries and that sort of thing. Now, what is a DotWalk? So in ServiceNow, this is pretty popular concept of the way they do things, and that's DotWalking. So when you have a reference field on a form, and a reference field is one of those fields with a little magnifying glass on it, what's actually stored in that field is the sys of the record it's referencing. It's a reference field. What's actually displayed in that field may be like the caller's name, but that's just the display field for that particular table. Now, the actual data stored in there is a sys but it allows you to go kind of down a little breadcrumb trail of dots in order to get something like the employee number of the manager whose employee is assigned to this particular incident. So you can state that in this simple way. Current, so current is the current record that I'm on. Dot assigned to, so go to the assigned to field. Dot manager, go to the manager of that on that assigned to user record, and then get the employee number. It's just an example of dot walking. It's just used a lot. All right, so how do we script in a GlideRecord query? So the very first step is to invoke GlideRecord by declaring a variable as a new GlideRecord. All right, so this is going to be the first statement or first line of code for you. So we start out with var int var equals new GlideRecord incident, right? Many times you're going to be looking through the code and scripts, and you're going to see a lot of scripts where it's stated var gr equals new GlideRecord. Try to avoid using gr. Gr is short for GlideRecord. It's lazy. You want to give your variable a more meaningful name than that, and usually you want to follow this kind of format of lowercase, 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 uppercase in the middle there. It's just standard JavaScript naming conventions. But this is the first line, right? So let's break down exactly what that first line says. So very first statement here is var. So we're going to, I'm declaring a new variable, right? Ints var, I'm going to call that variable ints var, right? Equals, well, that's an equal sign. Then the new statement, so that's new. So let's create a brand new instance of GlideRecord, which is the object we want to start new. And then we're going to feed GlideRecord with the name of the table that we want it to open, incident. And then we put a semicolon at the end because ServiceNow wants you to have a semicolon at the end of everything, just about. All right, so really, in layman's terms, what this says is open up the incident table, right? And call it ints var. All right, that's the first line. So what do we do from there? So normally you're going to do a GlideRecord. You're going to open up that incident table and you're going to query for some records. So here are some of the query methods that you're going to use. These are the ones that I use the most. This is not an exhaustive list though. So very first is a .add query. So ints var .add query, field name, value, right? You can have additional ones of these in a row, and they all are AND queries. So this and this and that. Then you have add encoded query. So add encoded query is really great when you have sort of a more complex query that's not as simple as priority is high, right? When you have something like, give me all the incidents that are between a certain date and are not assigned and this field is empty, or this, whenever things get kind of complicated, I like to go to an encoded query rather than stringing together a bunch of these. I'll show you how to use an encoded query and how to get that, but the best way is to bring up a list view in ServiceNow, build out the query that you want, return the records that you want, then right-click on it, say copy query, and then you can paste it in to this statement. And this is kind of what it looks like active equals true, category software separated by this little character, or categories hardware. So this is show me all the active ones were category software or hardware, right? And I can copy that, paste that into that where that query string is, and have that query without having to run .add query. Whoop. Then we have add null query. So this is a check to see whether or not a field is null, meaning empty, right? Or add not null query, field name, which is not empty. And then you have a dot add or condition. So you could have a dot add query this and then dot add or condition, field name value. So there would be this field name value or this field name value. But I don't generally, I have this in here, but I actually don't generally use this. Whenever I'm going to ors or thens or whatever, I'm going to do this add encoded query just as a shortcut. And then there's .get. So if I know the sysid of the record that I want, I can use a .get to retrieve exactly that record. I don't have to do anything else. I can just ints var .get this one, and then I can start working with it. All right, so a brief explanation of those. Let's actually run a query in our script. So we've got our first statements, right? Var ints var equals new GlideRecord incident, right? Open the incident table, call it ints var. And then we ints var .add query. So we're going to add a query to this where category is hardware, right? Category is hardware, add it to the query. Then, after we've done that, we actually have to press the run query button, basically, and that's what this statement says, ints var.query, right? That says, go ahead and run it. Press the run button, right? And then this next part of the statement is going to be doing something with the results, right? So while, so what while means basically is we're going to loop through all the different results one by one. And this says insvar.next means for as long as we have another record returned by the query. So while we've got a next record, go ahead and do something, right, with these brackets here. This is what we're going to do every time we have a new record. So open the incident table, search for categories hardware, run the query, and for every result, let's do something. Huh? All right, do something. Now let's do something. So generally the thing you want to do here is make an update, right? So we'll take our script from before here, right? We're opening up the incident table, categories hardware, run the query, and for all of the results, let's do something. So what are we going to do? Just to pull one out of our hat, we're going to update the impact to 3. So insvar.impact, that's the field name. So this is our record that we have open, right? Set the impact to 3. And then if we just left it there, it would do that, but it wouldn't actually save it. So we need to press the save button, and that's insvar.update, right? Insvar.query is run the query, insvar.update is update the record, save it. Right, so open the incident table, search for category hardware, run the search for every record in there, in that search, set the impact to 3, and update it. Done. All right. So other things we might do is we might create a new record. So how is it? That differs from a query because we're not really going to run a query, but the first statement stays the same, right? We declare a variable, we call it a new GlideRecord incident. Open up the incident table, right? And then we have this statement where we're taking our variable dot new record. So what new record does is it creates a new record in that table with all of the field defaults set, right? So if you had a default value for this, it got set, right? So set all the default values, open a new record and set all the default values. And then this one is dot set value, short description, whatever. So this is set the value short description to whatever. So, all right, our short description is going to be the word whatever. And then we've got, finally, press the save button, insvar.insert. Right? So go over this again, open up the incident table, bring me up a new record with all the defaults set short description to whatever, and then insert. So there's no need for a while statement or an if or anything like that. We're just creating a new record. And we can, if there are other fields that we want to set with different values, we can just chain these together and have multiple insvar.setValue, insvar.setValue, insvar.setValue. And following up the very end, we put in a .insert to create a new record. All right. Okay, so let's actually see how it's done and write some basic scripts here. All right, so I got my development environment. Now I got a requirement from a customer a while back, and they said, Joe, what we want is for whenever a change request that's related to an incident gets approved, we want to have a work note added to those related incidents. Right? Okay, so let's make that so. So we're going to use a business rule to do that. All right, so let's go to change. And let's create a new business rule. So we go to configure business rules. Click new. Okay, come on. Sorry. My dev environment seems to be a little slow. There we go. All right, we'll just call this incident work note. Look at that terrible typo. On approval. All right. So you may be somewhat familiar with business rules here. We can have a when to run. We want this to run when approval history changes. So, and on update. So now in a normal business rule, the best you can do here is do a set fields and setting a field on the current form or whatnot. And that's just not going to do it for us. We're going to have to write a script. So what we're going to do is we're going to click on this advanced checkbox, right? And that's going to open up our script area. All right, so it throws in a little bit of code in there for you. Just leave it there. See where it says add your code here. You're going to want to go ahead and FYI, 2 slashes like this means it's a comment, right? So it doesn't actually run, but we want to leave a good comment in our code to say, right, little comment about what our code is doing. All right, so let's start. The first thing we're going to do is var. I'm going to call this one int chg, right? Just because that's what I want to call it. Equals new glide record now. Did you notice what just happened there? You notice that, and this is really cool in the later releases of ServiceNow, is it bolded and italicized my glide record statement. So you see it's got a little underline. If I mouse over it and if I right click, I can show documentation. And it takes you right to the documentation for glide record. And that'll have all of the API dots add queries and dots that, right? Really slick. I love that feature. Right. Here's the documentation for that. Right, and see, I told you see that var gr everywhere. Everywhere. All right, so that was wonderful. All right, parentheses, table name. Now you'll notice something else that just happened. As soon as I finish typing in that table name, ServiceNow recognizes. This is how you know you've typed in the table name correctly, by the way. It bolded and italicized it, and now I got a right-click option. I can open up the table definition, but what I do most often is show data. Right? And it's going to open up a list view of incident for me. It's just super handy to have that, right? Now I've got all the incidents listed out. All right, put a semicolon at the end. Notice if I don't have the semicolon, I've got a little missing semicolon warning there. All right, so that's our first line, var ints change equals new glide record incident. All right. So now I want to query, so I'm going to say ints change dot add query, and notice as I type in, it pops up these options for me, right, with little helpful text of exactly what that does. It's awesome. So we're going to use add query, right? It says here's add query. You got string comma value. Right? So we're going to do, well, hold on. What field on the incident form are we going to query to find it if it's related to a change? Well, That's over here in related records. We see it's the change request field. But you know what's not going to work? Is that. Because that's not really the field name. That's just the field label, right? What we need to do is find the field names. One of the easiest ways to do that is just right click on it. Oh, we see this field name is RFC, even if the label is change request. So it's true with a lot of these fields, like this is problem underscore ID. This is caused by. So all these different fields have labels, but when you're scripting, you gotta call them by their names. Label won't work. So right click here, I see the field that I'm looking for is RFC. So I can delete this, RFC, right? So we're gonna query RFC, comma, well, what are we gonna look for? Well, I told you earlier that the reference fields, right, with these little magnifying glasses, what they're really storing in that field is the sys-ID of the related record, right? So what we want to feed our query is whatever the sys-ID is of the current record. Well, what's that, right? It's current dot. Notice as soon as I hit that dot, the editor here gave me a list of all of the fields on the current record, aka change request, right? And I want sys-ID because that's what's stored at the field. All right, so we're opening up the incident table and we're searching for all the incidents where the RFC field has our current record sys-ID in it. Next thing we got to do is change dot query. Run the query. Press that run filter button. All right. Now that we've done that, now it's time to actually do something. So we want, in this case, to loop through all of the results and update every single one of them. It could be that you only want to update necessarily one of them, or maybe only a subset of those. For just one or a subset, you can go if, but we're going to do a while. Right? While ints change dot next. So as long as we have a next, we're going to go loop through them all. And then we do what I call this a squiggly bracket, but everybody has a different method. As soon as I typed in that, the editor automatically adds the extra one. I love all the little shortcuts. Sometimes they're annoying, but most of the time the shortcuts help here. And definitely the text highlighting does. Because you can see my variable got highlighted blue, and then whenever I use it again, it's being highlighted as blue. All right, so give us a little space. And now within these brackets are what we're going to do with each one of these records. So what we want to do is update the work notes, right? So ints change dot work notes. I happen to know that the work notes fields is work underscore notes, right? Equals current, so the current record dot approval history. Okay, that's great. That script will save and run and won't actually do anything until we tell it to actually press the save button. All right, so let's review our little script here. Opening up the incident table on line 4 here. On line 5, we're adding a query where this RFC field here is the sys-ID of our change request. Go ahead and run that query. And then while we still have results, do this. That's what's inside those brackets is do something, right? Exchange.worknotes equals current.approval history. Right? Exchange.update. So set worknotes to whatever the current value of approval history. You'll notice, you'll remember that this is when what we're running on. Every time approval history changes, request 30,004, yeah, is now in this RFC field. Right? Good. Good. Okay. They're related. I could have related from this direction, but we're just doing it this way. I'll close this now. All right. So now we've got the relationship set up. And we've got our change ready to go. I'm going to request approval for this change. Go, request approval. Go over here to approvers. Got one. He's going to go ahead and approve it. There we go. And we notice if we go to notes, we can see that approval history got updated with change request has been approved by normal change policy technical approvers. So now we should be able to come back here, and in notes, we see a work note was added with the exact same thing. If we look at the other one, there it is. All right, so our little script work, it adds the work note. Maybe that kicks off some notifications or something like that. But as it gets approved, I bet if we continue on, let me reload this. All right, yeah, we're in the cab approval. Let's go ahead and do cab approval. There we go. Got another work note. And we can probably see, yep, another work note, another work note. So it's working like a charm. So every time now when a change gets approved and it has an incident related to it, we're gonna do an update. All right, pretty cool. That's doing an update. So let's do something. Let's create a new incident. Let's say whenever a change request is marked unsuccessful, we're going to have it create a new incident. Right? So let's do a new business rule. All right. So it's going to be advanced, and we're going to say whenever close code is unsuccessful on an update, right? We're going to add a little comment. All right, so what's our first line? It's the same one for all of the others. It's var. I'm going to use the same variable name as I did in my other script. You need to change variable names if you're using multiple of these statements. Need to be different variable names, but in different business rules, it doesn't really matter. It can be the same. New glide record incident. Semicolon. So we're going to want to create a new record here. So we're going to do change dot, oh, look at that. I hardly need to type everything out. New record, right? And then we'll do int change dot set value, right? Short underscore description, comma. Oh, now here's something. What I really want to do is I want to have the change number in the short description with a bit of a message. So I kind of want to concatenate that. So what I'm going to do, give myself a few more lines here and declare a different variable and call this ints desk, right, for description equals, right? And I want it to say this change failed, colon, space, and now I want the number added to that. So how do I do that? I just add it, right? All right, so what this line has done, it says, all right, create a variable, and this variable's value is going to be this text string plus the current change number or number. And now, when I do this set value of short description, I can just feed it my variable, right? Bam. Now, that's all well and good, but nothing happens until I press the save button. There we go. So we set up a variable with what we want in the description, right? We open up the incident table. We say, give us a new record. Set the value of short description to this, to my little variable here. Press the save button. All right. Let's submit that. And then let's go back to our change. The demo data in here has the numbers all messed up. Here we go. This one's scheduled. So let's implement. Let's pretend like the guy implementing this made a huge mistake and screwed everything up. So we're going to review, and something didn't go right. So we're going to say the change was unsuccessful. Right? Save that. Now that should have kicked off our business rule and created an incident. We should have this change failed. Oh, well, a short description did not come through, although we did create the new incident. Something must have went wrong. Let's see. You see what went wrong? Somebody can't type. I would have a typo during the webinar, right? Let's see if we can kick that off again. Oh, I want its own changes. Yeah. Oh, no. Kind of cheat this a little. Now that should have done what we wanted. Bunch 303s. There we go. And there we go. We've created it. All right, so one last thing before I'm done, I want to show you how the add encoded query works. So I'm going to come here to my list of incidents, right? And I'm gonna start building out my query just like I normally would, right? But let's say that I want all active equals true, and I want to show the ones that were created before today, right? Right, and category is hardware or category is software. And we'll run that query. All right, so this is going to return those records, right? And I've got this kind of long, complex query now. So what the thing to do here is right-click, copy query. Now we can go to our business rules, or wherever we're writing this script, because there's lots of different places to write scripts, right? And if I wanted to, I can add this extra query of ints change dot add encoded query. Paste. Right, and now this added encoded query is going to be included along with our add query. Let's comment that out. 2 slashes is a comment. Right, and now this is going to run this complicated query that includes JavaScript and all sorts of craziness in it. But we didn't have to write that out. All we had to do was build out the query, copy it, and then include it as an add encoded query. That's a big time saver for your more complicated kind of queries. All right. Whew. Okay. That's about it for this lesson. Just remember about the add encoded query, and I've got a couple more slides for you. I know you're all excited for a couple more slides, but I do have to cover this or my boss gets mad. Okay. I want to go. All right. All right, so there's a free offer with this webinar, and that's a basically 2-hour session with me, helping you write scripts and asking questions about basically maybe you've got a situation where you need a script written and you need some help. Hey, here's 2 hours of free consulting. So for that, contact my boss, Gene Landmesser, at GetGSI. Pretty nice offer, by the way. So we do webcasts, and there's lots of resource center, and you'll see this one up on YouTube as well. Okay, that's it. I think we can go now to any questions, Brittany. Are there any questions?
Brittany, are you there?
I don't see any questions. Oh, here's one. Can I do an example of inserting to a CO affected CI list? Oh, so going to a change, right? And you've got the affected CI list here, and you want to insert records in here. All right. So depending on where you're coming from, this is a good question. Is how do I add records in here? Well, the first thing you got to do is figure out, okay, what table is this, right? So what table holds affected CIs? Easiest way to do that, right click here, go to configure table. Right, oh, it's the task CI table. And what do I need to supply the task CI table? So I'm going to show form. And I need to give it a configuration item, aka the sysid of a configuration item, and the sysid of the task. So I need to provide this, the task CI and the configuration item. The task sysid and the configuration item sysid. And that's all to insert a record in here. So if I'm creating a new business rule for that, let's say I'm doing it from the thing, right? From an incident. I'll come here, right? So it's var task CI equals new glide record task underscore CI, because that's this table, right? And then we just need to do a new record, right? So it's task CI new record. And then we want to set task CI dot CI underscore item equals, you probably want to set this up in a variable or something, but imagine that we had sysid of CI, right? And then we want to set task CI dot task, which is just task equals sysid of the task. It could be a change request. It doesn't matter as long as it's in the task table. Uh-oh. I lost my sharing screen here. Right, I hope it's back. So we've set up a new record. We're setting the CI item, the CI task, right? Putting semicolons after everything, because that's what, and right, and then we're task CI dot insert. There you go. That'll do it.